Okay. Oh, yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let us call to order the meeting of the House Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment Committee. Thank you all so much for being here late in the afternoon. I know it's been a long day. I want to point out that we have quite a few members of this committee who are participating via Zoom. I can see one of them here. I can see the others' names. They are going to be participating and asking questions and commenting and voting where appropriate. And Molly, will you take note of the roll of everyone who's present? Okay. All right, we are here this afternoon to consider for the first time the Senate bill from Chairman John Kennedy. He is going to present his map, which has already been presented and gone through the committee process in the Senate and has passed on the Senate floor. It's customary during redistricting that the Senate allows the House to work on and draft its maps, and the House allows the Senate to, and we are respectful of the work that they have done, but we do still need to go through the committee process, and that's what we're here to do today. So Senator Kennedy, if you can present either from the podium or from the center table, whichever you prefer. Okay, I don't blame you.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you, and thank you to the members of the committee. It is my pleasure to be here before you, and I appreciate you giving me time. I watched with some admiration your great work, Chair, through with your bill on the floor today. And I want to say publicly first what I've said to you privately of how much I've enjoyed working with you with the joint hearings that we had around the state. I saw your dedication and your hard work, and you've made this this difficult, complex task from my perspective, and I think probably from the whole Senate's perspective, as enjoyable as it can. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll be brief, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have about what we have. So as I suspect many members of this committee have heard about what Chair Rich and I did with many of y'all across the state, which included 11 town hall meetings, 9 across the state, 2 that were Zoomed, and then a portal that was left open with which we received over 700 public comments. And then members, I offered myself to meet with the members of the Senate, each Senate member over the course of multiple days, either in Atlanta, my law office in Macon, or by Zoom, so that every member of the Senate had an opportunity to spend some time with me one-on-one to talk about what they wanted to share about their district. All of that information was then brought together, and as many of you know, we even had an education day at the Capitol where we heard from other groups that wanted to have the input. All of that collective information was then put into what you see as Senate Bill SB 1EX. We went about, I suspect, a very similar process to the work of this committee in taking the data that was available, although much later than normal, taking that data and inputting it to create a map that was least amount of changes, if you will, driven by the population and the population changes around the state. We also looked to make sure that we were creating and protecting Voting Rights Act districts that needed that protection. In addition to the other work, as we prepared the map and released it last Tuesday to the press, on Wednesday, we had our first meeting of the Senate Redistricting Committee, and our committee, consisting of 15 members, voted unanimously on the principles that would be the philosophical drivers behind how we would approach preparing our maps. All of that then went through our committee process. I presented the bill last Thursday. I allowed the minority leader to present her bill on Friday. The minority leader declined to take any action or allow any action or request any action be taken on her bill. And so we then turned to the bill that you have before you, which was passed out of our committee last Friday, placed on the floor yesterday, and came out of the Senate yesterday. I won't go over each district, but suffice it to say, we did the same thing that I'm sure that I know that y'all did, which was number one, making sure that what we produced and what we would propose to the chamber and ask that this body pass as well, it was a map that was consistent with the United States Constitution, the Georgia Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, and all the other laws that apply. From a procedural standpoint, we did some things that we were very pleased with, and that is you'll see on our map splits as few counties as really is possible. Currently, under the Senate map that we have, there are 39 county splits. We actually were able to reduce that to 30. There are only 30 county splits. We also did some things that we were pleased to be able to do, and I thank Gina Wright from the floor, and Chair, I heard your kind comments about her, which are spot on, and I too appreciate her work. We were able to put together a map that did not pit incumbents against each other. We were aided by the fact that we had at least two of our folks that are not coming back. And as far as if you were looking at the present map and say, well, John, what's the main big difference? You'll see a reassignment, if you will, of Senate District 7, Senator Tyler Harper's district in Southeast Georgia. Because of the population requirements, Senate District 7 was repositioned, if you will, up in Northeast Georgia and northeast of Atlanta. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions. But one other thing that is maybe of some interest, and just sort of by way of sort of closing out, our map has 14 minority districts in it. And it also importantly has 6 minority opportunity districts. And so that was maintaining compliance with the Voting Rights Act. And I'll give you one other statistic that I think shows the good faith that we on our side exhibited. As y'all know, we probably know, we currently have 34 Republican senators. It's a 34-22 split. This map proposes basically to take us to 33 Republican Senate districts. And that's a recognition of the trends and changes that we're all seeing in politics, but also making sure that we're in compliance and acting in good faith with the numbers that we've seen. So with that, I appreciate the committee's and the chair's consideration.
All right. Thank you, Senator. It looks like you have one question. Representative Scott.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Why are several counties with significant minority populations unnecessarily split into multiple districts? I'm gonna give you a few examples. Bibb, Chatham, Douglas, and Henry County, they're all split into 3 districts.
Representative, I appreciate the question, and trying to go through that, I guess I would not agree with your premise that they were split in a way that diluted. I think what you're saying is diluted minority voting. Bibb County, under the current map, is presently served by 3 senators. The proposed map would have 3 senators serve Bibb County. Chatham County is currently served by 2 senators. Under our map, it will have 3. That was a product of what was going on around Chatham County to the north and to the west. And you'll see that by making the change we did, which added a senator to the Chatham County district, we were able to take an adjacent county that was previously split and make it whole. I don't remember the other 2 areas that Henry County, I think, was one.
Yes.
And so again, similarly, I think as we have said many times on our side, and even the minority party has quoted it back to me, you really can't take one district and pull it out and say, why is this a particular way, and view it in a vacuum. You have to look at the area around it. You have to look at the districts around it. You have to look at the changes that have gone on that bring us to this point in time of having to make changes in the map.
Okay, and another question. Why is Athens Clarke County divided between two Senate districts when its residents made it clear that they want to be unified within a single district?
Senator, excuse me, Representative, I appreciate the question. And again, I think the beginning point there is Clarke County is presently served by 2 senators. So we did not increase the number of Senate districts in Clarke. One of the challenges about Clarke County is it is, although geographically small, when you look at it on the map, it is very populous, a lot of folks there and with tremendous growth. And it's one of those population centers for that part of the state that in trying to draw the maps, including that and the area around it, became very difficult, if not very impractical, to have one Senate district for Clarke County.
Okay, so how many districts in the proposed plan would allow minority voters the opportunity to elect their candidate of choice?
Well, if you're asking me about minority or majority minority districts, there are 14 majority minority districts. And then there's and one more that doesn't fit under that, but Senate District 2, we have one in Savannah, which is Senator Lester Jackson, which isn't necessarily a majority minority district by definition, but it has an African-American senator serving there. And in addition to those 15 districts that I referred to, there are 6 minority opportunity districts that we've created in this map.
Okay, can you tell me who advised you on the VRA compliance with the map?
You know, that's a combination of a lot of folks. Number one, we've had legal counsel that have assisted us. Number 2, Gina Wright and folks in the redistricting office have helped in that process. And you've had other people that have along the way provided us assistance in helping us make sure that this is a Voting Rights Act compliant map.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Representative and Chairman. And that appears to be the end of your questions from the members of the committee. We had indicated that we would allow public commentary as well. And we have a sign-up sheet that we are going to work through. If you all can limit, let's see. If you can limit your talk to 2 to 3 minutes, that would be great. And we will take you in the order that you signed up. We have had a couple more members join us, and then also I have the list of members who are attending via Zoom as well. We have Representative Alexander, Chairman Fleming, Speaker Pro Tem Jones, Chairman Randy Nix, and Chairman Chuck Evstration, who are participating via Zoom. All right, the first person we have is Janet Grant, and followed by Janet Grant will be Cindy Battles.
Well, sorry, lost my earring in the process, but good evening, almost evening. Chair Rich and members of the committee. My name is Janet Grant, and I'm Vice Chair of Fair Districts, Georgia. And you should have in your packet, and I believe Molly sent via for the folks on Zoom, my testimony and a couple of handouts as well. We're really pleased to have the opportunity to present to you today. Fair Districts Georgia is a grassroots citizen organization that's solely focused on advocating for fair redistricting. We're nonpartisan, nonprofit group of volunteers from across the state, and with me today are a number of our volunteers. I'm here to share with you the analysis by Fair Districts and our partners at the Princeton Gerrymandering Project on the proposed map for the state Senate. As you heard earlier this week in this committee from my colleague, Karen, the Princeton Gerrymandering Project was formed in 2017 by Princeton professor, Dr. Sam Wang, and is now one of the country's premier analytical resources on redistricting and gerrymandering. Princeton's analysis provides a nonpartisan independent set of analytical benchmarks for measuring the fairness of proposed maps. The benchmarks test for partisan bias, minority representation, and competitiveness. To create these benchmarks, Princeton drew 1 million simulated maps for the state Senate using the 2020 census data. These maps all comply with state and federal law and traditional redistricting criteria, similar to the guidelines that were adopted by this committee. The benchmarks create a range of acceptable values within a bell-shaped curve. So we've tested this proposed Senate map against these benchmarks, and I'm providing to you today the results. So on partisan balance, the Senate map is a partisan choice with 33 Republican and 23 Democratic districts. This particular map falls outside 99% of the million maps in our benchmark that allows for 28 to 32 Republican districts and 24 to 28 Democratic districts. On minority representation, according to our analysis, the current state Senate map provides minorities 34 districts in which to elect candidates of their choice, 20 districts in which minorities are the majority, and 14 minority influence districts. The Senate map you're considering tonight maintains the 20 minority majority districts, but has one less minority influence district. On competitiveness, the Senate committee or the Senate map has only one competitive district, which is fewer than 95% of the million maps in our benchmark. The benchmark predicts up to 9 competitive districts. So as compared to the map that you all voted out earlier this week, Princeton grades this Senate map as an F. So we would encourage you to reassess the Senate map to address some opportunities for improvement, to adjust to a fair partisan balance within the benchmark, to create at least 2 additional competitive districts, and to include an additional minority influence district. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and perfect timing, and I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions.
Okay, it does not appear that you have any questions. Thank
Okay,
you. That
thank
was
you.
very good timing. Next, we have Cindy Battles, followed by Vyante Joseph.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Battles, and I am the Policy and Engagement Director for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. I'm going to start out by pointing out that members of this committee have been allowed to join this meeting by Zoom, and we had hundreds of citizens who would have liked to have input on the maps that are going to impact their lives for the next 10 years who weren't allowed to come to the Capitol and were told that they could not testify by Zoom. So I am going to point that out. Y'all, I have been here every single day with data and maps, and this is how we can make Georgia more diverse and reflect the state that we live in. I have talked until I am blue in the face, and before this, I spent the last 5 years traveling all over the state of Georgia, teaching people about redistricting. When that gerrymandering looks like, I have put in the work to out-organize gerrymandering. Literally, look, I want y'all to look, because there is one person of color sitting here right now. And we are looking at maps that, while y'all are super proud of the number of majority and minority districts that you've created, you've literally done the very least. Saying that you are complying with the VRA when Section 5 is gone and the Supreme Court has literally said that they're not going to bother speaking into partisan gerrymandering, it's not hard to comply with the Voting Rights Act. It is not. And I am looking at maps that it's a foregone conclusion that y'all are going to pass these maps out of the House committee. And one of the things this House committee does is make sure that the one Asian American woman in the Senate loses her seat. At the same time, the Senate has rammed through 2 more bills that is going to remake the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education and make sure that the first Black woman who was voted countywide is going to lose her power. So I am not going to beg you anymore. I'm going to tell you, I see what's about to happen. I'm not stupid. I've been here a while. Y'all are going to pass these out and they will get to the House and you will make sure that you have the majority for another 10 years. But I will be here every single session to remind you that you did this, because if it is true that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, I swear to God, we will take it and we will bend it faster. So vote how you're going to vote. I would ask you to do the right thing and vote for Senate maps and House maps that diversify this assembly so that people of color can represent people who represent them in more ways than one. I would beg you to do that, but you're not going to. But we're watching. We see you.
Thank you, Ms. Battles. I appreciate your passion. All right, next we have Vyante Joseph, followed by Desiree Jones.
Thank you for your work and for the opportunity to speak to you today. I am Vyante Joseph. I am the organizing director for the Asian American Advocacy Fund here in Georgia. We are a grassroots organization that advocates for federal, state, and local policies to improve the lives of Asian Americans and other immigrant communities here in Georgia. Like Ms. Battles just mentioned, I am here today to reiterate what we've been saying over and over for months. We have traveled to these hearings and talked to you before. But yeah, we're seeing these maps being drawn on and voted on with such speed that there is not time for transparency. There's not time for inclusion of our communities in these maps that affect them. I am here today because our Asian, Black, and Hispanic communities, especially in Senate District 48, the one Asian representative that we have, we are tremendously disappointed with the redrawing of this district. This district, this representative was elected in a pure democratic fashion, and it is now being eroded for political gain. Senator Kennedy talked about the counties that were being kept whole and all the minority majority districts. This is one that does not follow that rule, that little guideline. This has been redrawn from a minority majority district to 52% white. You have changed this district from 38 to 52% white. We have kicked the Black voters out of the district. Clearly, it's not even like up for debate. And these communities have not had any input in this. This is a deliberate attempt to crack this growing Asian numbers in Gwinnett and North Fulton. We see this. We see that what was just Gwinnett and North Fulton in this district now includes Forsyth. We showed up to your town hall in Cumming. We asked you to keep this district whole. And you claim to have created these maps based on this testimony, but this evidence proves otherwise. I even recall at that town hall, the Forsyth County voters didn't ask for this either. But here we are. We seriously and really urge you to not rush these hearings and the votes. These are our communities. These should be our lines. We would like to have a say in who represents us. We want our votes to count and elect our representatives, not for them and you to select your voters. Please do not ignore this growing minority population in State District 48 and across Georgia. This is our home, and we deserve a voice at the table, a voice that's listened to. Please keep us whole and reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joseph. You have a question. Sorry.
Ms. Joseph, I appreciate you being here today and being part of the process. I want to address your points and Ms. Battle's points as well. I just want to say some things. And I want to say this in a way of just honesty. I mean, and there's a lot of folks that are watching on the internet too. And I don't want the silence of myself or other committee members to be misconstrued to concurrence or indifference. I think what Ms. Battle said, one thing she said, I thoroughly agree with, that the arc of the moral universe is long and slow and it bends towards justice. I think we can all agree with those. The words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., those have been used by other elected officials over the years, and I strongly Agree. The premise I would disagree with, that you, I think, kindly alluded to, and I think she more either passionately, I think in some ways inappropriately alluded to, was the premise that bad things are happening in these maps. I think these are good and fair maps. I think any objective analysis of this are good, fair, non-gerrymandered maps. I reject the premise these are gerrymandered. I'm convinced they're not to Ms. Battle's political likings. I'm persuaded of that. And I think we can all see the passion with which Ms. Battle spoke and recognize they're not to her political liking. But when you look at the maps we've got before us here, you know, when the Democratic caucus, who in the presumption here is representing the interest you're talking about, I think I reject the presumption that the Democratic caucus is looking after minority interests. They're looking after political interests. But I want to raise the question as you look at this, and it was raised by Ms. Battles and it was raised by you. When you look at the majority, minority, and the minority influence districts, the Democrat caucus drew maps that had a combined total of 34 majority minority districts and minority influence districts, 34. And this map has 33. Very, very, very close. I think from the perspective of 56 districts, it's almost the same. When you look at Black majority districts, the Democrat caucus drew 13. This map draws 13. The narrative for folks out there in TV land who don't understand what's on these maps is almost absurd. I'm convinced that Ms. Battles doesn't like the political outcome of these maps, but these are fair and square maps by really any analysis. And I think this committee is wise to accept them. And I think many of the interests that you raise are protected. The premise that because there's going to be an Asian member that loses a district, likely, it may or may not, but likely is happening here. The presumption that has something to do with some kind of animus towards one group it's absurd. There's when you draw maps, there are some impacts on incumbents that we recognize. I wasn't really happy with my district as a member, but it's part of what we live with. I just want those who are watching this on TV to recognize there's been an earnest, forthright effort to comply with not just the letter, but the spirit of the Voting Rights Act in every way in these maps. It's memorialized here. These maps are actually fairly close to those that were drawn by the minority. And the premise that these are gerrymandered, I just flatly reject, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to say that for the record.
May I respond?
Yes.
Thank you for your question or your statement. Just for my response to what I was saying, I'm not here for partisan interests. It doesn't matter to me which side it favors. I am here for the voters. I am here to ensure, and what I am looking at, and we at the Asian American Advocacy Fund are looking at when we look at the maps, is that our minority voters have a vote that counts. And the power is in our voters' hands, not in the hands of the people drawing the maps.
I would agree with you, and I represent a large number of Asian voters in my district who I treasure, many whose doors I stood on for hours in the last year and have communicated with in constituent service matters over the years. The fact that we have partisan labels behind us as elected official is almost a below the radar screen poke on us, because you don't have a partisan label behind you. You're trying to propose that you're somehow above the process, and that because people in this room, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, have a sort of a baser partisan outlook. I reject that politely. I reject that premise as well. There are people in our districts of all backgrounds that we treasure, and we're trying to represent their interests. And many of us as public officials in both the Democratic and Republican Party give much of our lives to do that very honorably. And the suggestion otherwise is, I think, a little troubling, and I think a little disingenuous.
Yeah, and I understand you all work hard, and whatever side you're on, it's appreciated. I know it's a thankless job, regardless of what you do, you know that. But I do want to come back to one of my other points, which is if these were really such great fair maps, why don't we have the time to look over them, right? So maybe they are. Why wouldn't you give us the time to come up with that decision ourselves? From the research we've done, it's so hurried. And I know we all want to get home for the holidays, but this is so important. We all
All
know
right,
how
thank
important
you.
this is.
Thank you, Ms. Joseph, for your testimony.
All right,
All
thank
right.
you.
Next, we have Desiree Jones, followed by Hanna Gabriel Solasi. I should know how to say that by now.
All right. Hey, y'all. Chairman Rich, members of the committee, my name is Desiree Jones. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the policy associate at the New Georgia Project and the New Georgia Project Action Fund. I'm also a lifelong resident of Georgia. I was born in Valdosta. I went to college in Macon, and now I live in Atlanta with my fiance. And I have been here every single day of this special session, which is now a full week old, 1 week. We've had time to look at these maps. Last Tuesday, the Braves won the World Series and the Senate Reapportionment Committee released its proposed map. And the next day held a meeting to discuss the maps that the public had only access to for a matter of hours. On Friday, that map passed out of committee. And on Tuesday of this week, yesterday, it passed through the Senate chamber. And today we're talking about this map here in this committee. It's taken people longer to pass kidney stones than it has for us to review these maps. And I'm sure that's a much more pleasant experience. Not only have Georgians not had an adequate amount of time to review this map, but their commentary on it has been effectively ignored. Cities have been split, diluting the voices of people of color. Cities like Johns Creek, Warner Robins, Savannah, Columbus, and my beloved city of Macon have all been split into 2 or 3 districts each. In South Georgia, cities like Waycross and Ware County and Douglas and Coffee County have also been split into multiple districts. These are cities and areas of the state that have lost population, but it's still places where it's wholly possible to keep these cities intact, but the Senate has not taken care to do so. This body, though, has the time to make things right, both in communities of color and places like Macon and Johns Creek, in those Southern Georgia towns like Waycross and Douglas. We understand that this body considers county lines with more weight than city lines, but do the residents of Johns Creek identify more strongly as residents of the city or as Fulton County residents, which is what this process is fundamentally supposed to be about, ensuring that Georgians can choose their elected representation. Since last Wednesday, I have heard multiple times that when Democrats were the party in power in 2001, they made horrendously gerrymandered maps. And that was wrong. I can say that with zero equivocation. I can also say with zero equivocation that it was wrong when, according to an institution I know that y'all respect, the University of Georgia, the Carl Vinson Institute said in 2010 that the maps, like Democrats before them, Republicans drew maps in a way that increased their voting power, even as their share of the vote sank. Republicans got away with it only because the voting rights bill and the voting rights division itself was well on the way to being gutted by Republican presidential administrations. But the big thing for me about all the talk about 2001 and 2011 is that I was 6 in 2001. I was 16 in 2011. I'm 26 and I'm up here today fighting for the people of this state in a way that I couldn't do when I was in the 1st grade, learning how to read, but I'm here doing it now. There are people like me who want to be involved in this process, but they don't know about it because they're young. But y'all are making decisions that are going to be with them for the next decade. And it's not fair what y'all are doing to Georgia's voters or Georgia's children. And I hope y'all would take that into consideration and give us at least the next 2 weeks to review these maps and ensure that we have a fair outcome for all Georgians. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Next, we have Hanna Gabriel Solasi, followed by Rochelle Solar.
Good afternoon to the committee, to the public, to everyone who is tuning in. I'm going to keep my comments really, really short today. I just want to encourage you all. I want to urge you all to please consider giving more time to this process. You've heard it multiple times. There are experts in this room. There are people who have been doing this work for years. I understand I'm new to this. I'll be very transparent about that. This is my 1st year being involved with redistricting. I am learning every single day. And I think that Georgians deserve the opportunity to just get a little bit more time to provide that public input, to see how we can all meet each other somewhere closer to what that just and fair and transparent equilibrium point will be. There has to be a point that's better. The other day, we saw Democrats, Republicans, independents in here calling for more time, for more transparency, and for different changes to these maps. So I'm just asking you all, I'm urging you all to consider, not even consider, to act, to give more time in this process. So again, the leaders in here who have been leading the forefront can work directly with you all to create fair and transparent maps. And finally, I want to say today is my birthday, and one of my birthday wishes is to receive more time in this process so all Georgians can celebrate many more birthdays happily and fairly and justly. Thank you.
Happy birthday. All right, we have Rochelle Solar, followed by our last speaker, Kiana Michelle.
I'll see if I can get through this. My name is Rochelle Solar, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you about the proposed Georgia Senate maps. I hope you will listen to what I have to say with an open mind and an open heart. As a scientist, I truly make a conscious effort to approach each and every problem in this way, and I hope that you will do the same. Please remember that it is nearly impossible to give any problem a fair analysis when there is already a predetermined answer. These proposed maps do not provide Georgia with fair maps, and we can do better. I completely understand how difficult this process is. There are many, many factors to consider when drawing a map, and to complicate this process even more, there are even multiple ways to define each factor. I will state from the outset that my disappointment with these maps is based on the fact that they are drawn to favor the majority party and that they nearly eliminate competitive districts. When a computer draws a map using traditional redistricting principles, 99% of the time, the computer can do better. The minority party wins more districts. This tells me that the Senate Redistricting Committee consciously drew these maps to hold onto the power by using their power to draw the lines. Given that Republicans spread themselves out into rural areas and Democrats pack themselves into cities, the redistricting process in Georgia already favors the Republican Party. Rhetorically speaking, why do these maps go beyond this inherent advantage to further disadvantage the Democrats in Georgia? When I look at the House Committee guidelines for redistricting, I'm aware that they do not include partisan fairness or competitive districts. However, the guidelines do state that, quote, the committee should consider the boundaries of counties and precincts. When I attended the Senate hearings on this map, I heard time and time again how this map reduces the number of county splits to fewer than the previous maps. This is true, but it is also true, according to a study conducted by 538, that prioritizing county lines gives Republicans, again, an advantage. This map keeps 129 counties whole and splits the other 30 into 2 or more districts. This sounds good, but upon further investigation, a bias regarding these counties are split and shows up in the Democratic counties. For example, Gwinnett County is split into 9 Senate districts when it could fit into 5. Fulton County is split into 10 and it can fit into 6. And there are more examples of that as well, but I will wrap up. The criteria you choose to grade the maps is extremely important. If you want to focus on population criteria and county splits, the proposed map may even deserve an A. But if you want a map that is fair, transparent, represents the entire state of Georgia, and reduces partisan extremes, then I agree with the Princeton Gerrymandering Project that this map deserves an F. Please vote no on this proposed Senate map and spend time to find a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solar. Next, we have Kiana Michelle.
Good evening, y'all. My name is Kiana Michelle Jones. I was writing too fast. I did not put my last name. But at any rate, It's heartbreaking right now to sit and watch other members of my community. My shirt today says the community, because we're here standing in community. And we're standing for the principles of democracy, the principles that we've been taught over and over again in institutions of learning that are supposed to lean toward justice and fairness. But we really don't see that happening. And it's particularly hurtful to hear people recite the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when you are voting today to do exactly the opposite of what he stood for. It's the slap in my face. It's the slap in the faces of all of those Georgians who came here the other day together to stand in solidarity for truth and for justice. What we see right now is that people are getting their feelings hurt because things are being called out for what they are. But you need to get your feelings off of your sleeve. You need to stop trying to defend your injustice against the residents of Georgia and call a spade, and just say, I don't like you and I don't want you to vote. Because that's what it is. If you got nerve enough to spit in our faces and tell us it's raining, then have nerve enough not to throw a rock and hide your hand. Now, there are members of this committee who claim they have questions for the residents who come here, yet they begin to testify themselves, because what happens is that my granny always told me that a hit dog will holler. But if it don't apply, you can let it fly. So all that we see by your testimony and by your constant poking of the bear to these residents and voters who come is that you're giving away your hand when all we've asked for is time. We don't see the harm in allowing us to have time to analyze these maps. Do you think that we're not intelligent enough to do so? I think many have already proven that we are, because all we need is time. It's not fair when we come into one hearing to speak about one map and then another is presented. It's not fair when things are being done in clandestine closed door meetings with the public not involved. This right here is the very reason why many choose to homeschool their children, because they will send them to a school that will teach them all about this process, and they'll go through life thinking that this is fair. And they'll grow up and become civically engaged and have their feelings hurt, just like the people who have stood here before me in tears. And yes, I shed tears with them, because like them, I want a Georgia that is fair. I want a Georgia that's reflective of the people who live in it. I want a Georgia that can stand up to all of those grand ideas that I held as I grew up here. We want to see a Georgia where all Georgians know that there's fairness, where there's equality, equity, and justice, and that is all we want.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. All right, that concludes the okay, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Rich, esteemed members of the committee. Thank you, Chair Kennedy. My name is Vaso Abhiraman, Senior Policy Counsel with the ACLU of Georgia. Really appreciate you extending the courtesy for me to make some remarks here. I wanted to address, well, first, the Voting Rights Act, just mentioning that it seems like the Senate maps focus a little too much on quote unquote already existing VRA protected districts. And we believe that's the wrong approach, that the map has to be taken as a whole. Second, I testified in front of you as a Georgia native and a Georgia Tech alumnus. I'm also a UGA alumnus. It depends on if I'm trying to identify as a hell of an engineer or an attorney and my audience. The Senate map's even worse when it comes to this Georgia Tech split. You have almost 200,000 residents in each Senate district, and yet the North Avenue Apartments, the old Olympic Village, is split off in Senate District 36 in this proposal, with the rest of Georgia Tech's campus in Senate District 39. I sort of believe that this is the example that indicates the spirit of this process. Unfortunately, I know I made a reasonable case that this was something that shouldn't exist in the new map, and yet it doesn't seem to be getting addressed. Would still encourage that it be addressed, and that the rest of the college campuses that we've asked to be unified, be unified. Partisan balance is not at stake in that situation. Representative Dollar, you had asked about how many people are actually voting in those North Avenue apartments. A cursory check through the database that I have access to indicates that each of the 4 buildings as part of it has hundreds of registrations associated with it. I want to close with a nod to an organization called Transparency International. Recently, they scolded the Nigerian National Assembly for practices that were not good governance. They said the Nigerian National Assembly should adopt a transparent, ethical, and inclusive process that allows members of the public and all stakeholders to participate fully in determining resulting legislation. I hope we can go forward ensuring that organizations like that can concentrate on other countries instead of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. And thank you for your brevity too. Appreciate that. All right, that concludes. And I'm sorry, we have concluded this portion of the hearing. Okay, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. You've spoken many times. We've heard what you've said, the same thing multiple times. So we are going to proceed with the next item on the agenda. What is the will of the committee? Yes. What number is? Oh, 22. All right. Yes. Okay. We have a motion and Representative Deloach.
Do you already have the?
Yes, she just moved.
That's fine. And I'd second that motion.
All right. Any discussion? Representative Scott.
Madam Chair, we sit here again today, seeing the same old thing. The people have come and they have asked that they have more time to look at the maps. They have asked that they have more time, and they have asked you all to consider communities of interest. They have asked that you all consider doing the right thing. And today, we sit here and we are all still wondering when will right be done in this process. And the time is now. It is no need to rush with the maps. I will ask that you give the public time to review these maps because they have not had the time or the opportunity to review the maps. And I'm going to say that I cannot consciously sit back here and just trying to wonder why are we in such a hurry? Why we are not affording the people the opportunity to review the maps. They asked for 2 weeks to review the maps as we went around this state. And the maps have just come out, and we have voted the House maps out, and now we're getting ready to vote on the Senate maps. And this is not giving the people of Georgia time to review these maps. But I thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Representative Scott. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and it appears that we do not have any more discussion. So at this time, all in favor of the due pass motion for LC 471165S, known as Senate Bill 1EX, please raise your right hand. And those who are on Zoom, have your cameras on. I see that you all do. Our policy analyst is going to count and record the vote. Okay, you can lower your hands. All those opposed, please raise your right hand. Okay, I see one on Zoom and one here. Okay, thank you very much. It passes. So thank you very much, Chairman Kennedy. With that, we are adjourned.